From the frost-bitten edges of forgotten kingdoms, welcome back to the Silent Historian, where the past bleeds into the present and the silence of old stone speaks louder than armies. Thank you for walking with us once more into the long corridors of time. Now step quietly, the tower awaits. The wind slices across the moors, dragging with it the cries of wolves and the laughter of men too drunk to notice death. Somewhere beyond that mist, jagged like torn cloth, a fortress broods atop a hill of ice-veined granite. It was never meant to be warm, never meant to be kind, built by men who trusted stone more than blood. Inside, beneath vaults that echo more than they shelter, a boy kneels in prayer. The torch above him flickers, tired from the damp. The candles near the altar have burned down to stubs, their wax curled like the claws of old saints. He wears a robe too fine for this chapel, too fine for kneeling on frozen flagstones, but it doesn't matter. Nothing fits anymore. He clasps his hands tightly, not out of faith, but out of fear they might tremble. His confessor tells him God sees all. But the boy has seen enough to wonder if God ever looks away. He was not born to rule. Born second, he was meant to serve, to fight, to bow, to marry into obscurity. His brother, bold, cruel, lion-hearted, in all the wrong ways, wore the crown like a gauntlet. Where the older boy shouted, he whispered. Where the brother charged, he waited. But fate does not ask who is ready. It simply arrives. A poisoned cup. A hunting feast. Laughter turned to gurgling. Blood staining the fresh snow like spilled ink on royal parchment. He was 10. The world tilted. Tutors began to speak in cautious tones. The Chancellor summoned him at dawn. His mother wept in the chapel where no one could see. And one morning he was called to court and handed 3 iron rings, symbols of kingship, cold and ancient. His hands were so small the rings clanged together like shackles. He did not speak. He merely bowed. The game stopped after that. No more wooden swords, no more muddy races with squires through the orchard paths. The orchard was burned for security. The squires were dismissed. In their place came mercenaries with scars instead of smiles. They taught him how to read a blade's shadow on a wall, how to lie without blinking, how to drink without flinching, how to offer nothing, not even hope, to those who circled him like carrion birds. He was watched, measured, groomed, cut into something smaller than a king but larger than a pawn. Then came the whisper. A letter. Forged but convincing. A dead nobleman. A friend once. A blade found beneath his mattress, planted surely, but too perfectly placed. No one listened. The court did not need proof, only permission. The trial was no more than a requiem performed while the body still breathed. Hooded judges stood like statues. Tapers wept in silence. And the jury, peers who had once laughed at his boyish jokes, would not meet his eyes. He was sentenced. Not to death, too noble, but to something colder. They called it confinement. They meant erasure. The tower where they placed him leans like a drunk into the wind. Its stones weep moss. Its windows are slit like wounds that never healed. It stands beside the chapel, but no bells ring for him now. Inside, the walls are carved with prayers left by others, men who never returned. Their names have vanished, but their desperation lives in every scratch of Latin, and scratched-out plea to saints long forgotten. He lives among ghosts, but none speak. His only companions, a blind raven that perches on the window each morning and refuses to fly, and a broken lute missing 3 strings, its sound no better than the wind itself. At first he kept a record. He scratched days into the wall, sang to keep the silence from crushing his ribs, recited treaties, names of ancestors, the laws of succession. Now he barely counts. The days blur into one long prayer unanswered. Each dawn he wakes before the light and walks the edges of his cell with bare feet. 10 paces by 8, 10 paces by 8, his own coastline, his own map, a kingdom drawn not in ink, but in dust and cracked stone. Sometimes he imagines the door will open, that someone, a loyal knight, a weeping servant, even his mother, will appear and say it was all a mistake, that his name still means something outside these walls. But the door never opens, only the wind finds him. At night he dreams. In dreams he sees his brother's eyes, burning with fever, or was it fury? He sees the goblet, overturned, the ring tumbling from dead fingers, the scream that never left his throat. He sees his father standing on the cliffs years ago, pointing toward the sea and saying, "Rule it if you dare." And he sees himself, no crown, no blade, and standing alone in a hall of mirrors, and none of them return his gaze. He does not weep. There is no one to see it. But once, just once, he took the broken lute and placed it in his lap, as if it still held music. He ran his fingers over the strings and whispered a song his nurse used to hum when thunder shook the nursery walls. The raven tilted its head, and for a moment he felt the shape of who he used to be. A boy with calloused hands, with ink on his thumbs, with dreams not yet stolen by duty, betrayal, or silence. Now when he prays, he does not pray to God. He prays to the cracks in the stone, to the dust caught in the window light, to the raven who sees and does not speak. He prays not for release, but for memory, to remember who he was, who he might have been, who he still is, beneath the velvet, beneath the chains. Because in this world of shadows, rust, and whispered lies, memory is the only thing they cannot take. And so he waits, not for rescue, not for justice, but for the chapter not yet written, the next breath, the next betrayal, the next wind that rattles the chapel doors like a giant's hand. For even here, even now, the story is not finished, and beyond the stone walls something stirs. Stay with us, because in the next chapter we follow the silent rider, the one bearing a letter sealed in wax and soaked in secrets, and the choice he must make when duty and blood collide once more. This is the silent historian, and this story is only just beginning. The hooves strike frost-bitten earth like war drums, not fast, deliberate, steady. Each step echoes through the pass as if time itself is listening. A lone rider winds through the mountain road, cloak soaked with sleet, breath fogging the air like smoke from a dying pyre. His face is hidden beneath a hood, but the hands holding the reins tell another story, and bruised knuckles, leather, cracked by years of silence, of carrying messages no one should hear. On his saddlebag, a seal, broken. He had not meant to read the letter, but the wax was soft, the parchment still warm from the Chancellor's own desk, and inside words that should have been buried beneath cathedrals, not sent north. Transfer the prince, the vote passed, no witnesses, no return. He did not flinch. He had served 3 kings, dug graves for 2 of them, delivered death sentences with the same voice he once used to sing psalms. He was not a traitor, only a shadow of someone who once believed in justice. But this was not justice, this was erasure. As he rides deeper into the valley, the monastery comes into view, not a place of peace, but a prison dressed as sanctuary. Its towers tilt under snow like old men in prayer. Smoke rises from only one chimney. No bells toll, not anymore. He halts at the gate. The monk who opens it does not speak. No one does here. Silence is the rule. Vows carved into skin, oaths taken with blood. The rider dismounts, hands over the letter. But before turning back, he whispers 3 words, words meant only for wind and memory. He is innocent. The monk does not reply, only nods. The gate closes. The rider leaves. But he does not return to court. He does not return at all. In the dim cell, the prince senses something has changed. The wind no longer howls, it waits. Footsteps echo in the stairwell, measured, slow, final. The kind of footsteps that have purpose, the kind that do not return upward. He stands, straightens his spine, smooths his tunic, even though it still carries the scent of damp stone and long-forgotten dreams. The door creaks open. The monk steps aside. No chains, no threats, no speech. Just a gesture, out into the light. The courtyard is colder than he remembers. The air slices his lungs. Monks move in circles, heads bowed, lips unmoving. In the centre, a small wooden cart barely large enough for a trunk. The prince is told, by a single motion, to climb in. He does, not because he understands, but because this is what happens to those who once held power. Their choices are ghosts. The cart rolls out, past the chapel, past the graves, past the broken statues of saints too worn to name, and then the woods. They ride for hours, the silence thicker than the mist, which clings to the world like a dying breath. He does not ask where they're going, he only listens to the wheels, the wind, the way the world hums when you've been forgotten. Then, suddenly, the cart stops. The monk gestures again. The prince steps down, no explanation, no farewell, no pardon, only a key, dropped into his hand like a pebble into a well, and then the cart turns and vanishes into the fog. Before him stands a ruin. Once a watchtower, perhaps. Now nothing but stone walls, cracked timbers, and ivy grown too wild. But it is dry, and inside, tucked in the corner, a satchel. Bread, a blanket, a knife, a book without a name, no guards, no chains, no company, just a place and time. Time to vanish, time to survive, time to become myth. Or memory. Centuries later, the ruin still stands. Children dare each other to climb its walls. Old men say a ghost walks there, tall, proud, silent. A figure who speaks only to ravens. Inside, beneath the floorboards, a lute string still rests, coiled like a question, and carved into the stone behind the hearth, faint beneath the soot and moss, 7 words. I was a king, I remembered everything. The river has changed course. Where it once ran beside the old market road, it now eats at the foot of forgotten graves. Bones slide into the current, names vanish with the silt. And yet across that grey water a chapel still stands, crooked, quiet, nearly consumed by vines. Inside, by the cold altar, a man stares at a candle that refuses to stay lit. It has been 12 winters since he last heard his name spoken aloud. 12 winters since he touched silk. 12 winters since he was told he mattered. The prince, now a man with a gaunt face and storm-coloured eyes, lives in this chapel, this ruin, this sanctuary turned grave. He eats little, sleeps less, speaks not at all, and still, he remembers everything. He remembers the betrayal, the ring tumbling from his brother's finger, the smell of burnt cloves during the tribunal, the Chancellor's voice cracking slightly when he read the verdict. He remembers the blind raven, long gone now, and the monk, the only one who ever hesitated before closing a door behind him. Most of all, he remembers the feel of the crown, cold iron pressed to a boy's brow, a weight meant for gods, not children. One night lightning splits the sky. It strikes the old tree outside the chapel, the one with twisted roots and sap that smells like wine. When he steps outside barefoot to see the smoke, he finds something he had not expected. A girl, no older than 10, mud on her dress, blood on her sleeve, her eyes too wide for a face so small. She does not speak, but she does not run, either. She simply stands beneath the burning tree as if waiting for someone else to decide what she becomes. He says nothing, only reaches out his hand. She takes it. They share the chapel. He patches the roof. She gathers wood. He brews broth. She finds herbs. She does not ask who he was. He does not ask why she came. Their silence is not awkward. It is sacred. But slowly she begins to hum. Tunes he recognizes, lullabies from court, melodies buried in memory. One night he hums back, and just like that, the silence breaks. Over time they speak in pieces. Her name is Ileana. She had a brother, a noble father, a cruel stepmother. One night the castle burned. No one came back out, except her. She walked east, guided only by dreams of a raven who whispered, "Find the man with no name." He teaches her to read. She teaches him to smile. He tells her about stars. She tells him about fear. He gives her the knife once meant for his execution. She buries it beneath the altar and says, "We don't need it now." He begins to believe her. Far from the chapel, a Somme brews. The realm he once ruled in name is choking on its own pride. The new king, the cousin who stole the crown, has no heir. His lords whisper of plague, of rebellion, of the ghosts in the old line. And then, rumours, of a child surviving the fire, of a man in the woods who walks like a prince and prays like a monk, of a chapel that sings when it should not. The whispers become panic, and panic in courts breeds action. A letter is sent, sealed in red wax, a hunter is summoned, and a name is spoken in secret for the first time in 12 long years. Bring back the boy king, dead or silent. He rides at dawn and alone. His armour dented from older wars, his blade never drawn unless it ends blood. He does not kill for sport, only for silence. He crosses the moor, follows the old road, and when he reaches the river, he finds the chapel waiting, dark, breathless, still. He does not knock, he does not announce, and he enters. Inside he finds the child, and the man. They do not run, they do not beg. The hunter pauses, because something in the room feels heavier than fate. The candle does not flicker. The dust does not stir, the child does not blink. Then the man steps forward. Not with fear, not with pride, but with memory. He speaks once, clearly. I was a king, and I remember everything. The hunter lowers his blade and bows. Years pass. In the ruins of that kingdom, a book is found, bound in raven leather, titled in a hand that bleeds grace, unreadable to most. But one passage survives, scribbled on the last page, faded by weather, but not by time. It reads, "They thought a crown was power, they thought exile was death, but memory was the throne they could never touch." And in the chapel, beneath stars that no longer blink, the girl sits beside a grave marked with no name. She hums a tune only two men ever knew, one who wore a crown, and one who bowed before it, not in fear, but in respect. The frost has returned. Not the gentle kind that kisses rooftops and disappears by noon, but the kind that bites through wood, cracks stone, and stays long after the fires have died. In the western court, cloaked in ivy and ruin, the high banners still hang, but they no longer carry meaning. Their gold has faded, their threads hang like nooses, and beneath them, in a room once used for crowning kings, someone has begun to whisper again. The prince still lives. The words are not shouted, they're not written. They slip from mouth to mouth in taverns, in cloisters, in stables at dusk. The poor believe them with holy certainty. The nobles pretend not to, but they listen all the same. One servant claims to have seen him. Older now, greyer, eyes like old iron. But still walking, still breathing, still dangerous. In the dead of night, in the royal citadel where the stolen king now sleeps, a new council meets. Not priests, not soldiers, not lords. Assassins, raised in silence, paid in secrets, trained not to fight wars, but to erase them. Their order has only one rule. The mission is clear. A girl, no more than 10. She hums a song only royalty knows. She lives in a ruin, in the woods. Find her. Find him. Bury what's left beneath the snow. Far from court, the ruin stands against the wind, held together by memory and will. Inside, the fire burns low. The prince sits by it with Ileana curled beside him, half asleep, wrapped in an old cloak that once belonged to his brother. She does not fear the cold. She does not fear the silence. But tonight, her humming has stopped. She stares at the door and whispers, "They're coming." He does not ask how she knows. She has dreams sometimes. Dreams of black horses and boots without sound. Of cloaks that drip with red. Of voices that do not speak but command all the same. He sharpens no blades. He packs no bags. Instead, he kneels beside her and lights a second candle, the one he had saved since the monastery, for the day he knew would come. The day memory would no longer be enough. There are 3. No names, no voices, just breath and steel and the smell of ash that clings to men who burn the truth behind them. They reach the ruin before dawn. The snow muffles everything, the world seems held in pause. But as they draw their blades, the chapel door creaks open on its own. Empty. Too empty. Inside they find carvings in the wall, not words, symbols. Old royal glyphs used only in the time of the founding kings, forgotten by all but blood. The youngest assassin hesitates. Something ancient stirs beneath the floor. Suddenly the silence shatters, not with screams, not with swords, with singing. From the hills above, a single unbroken melody rides the wind. A lullaby once reserved for coronations. And the one humming it is not the girl. It is him, the forgotten prince. Standing atop the ridge, cloaked in winter, face bare, eyes burning. He holds no weapon, only a scroll sealed in the wax of the old royal house. He does not flee. He walks down the hill toward the men who came to erase him. Each step is steady. Each breath is deliberate. Each moment echoes like history waking up from a long sleep. He stops just beyond their reach and speaks. I am no threat to the crown. I do not seek vengeance, but harm her, and I will become the very ghost you were sent to silence. The oldest assassin lifts his blade, but the scroll falls to the snow between them. The seal is unmistakable, the true royal line, signed by the dying king years ago, declaring his younger son heir should his firstborn fall. It had never been delivered. The rider who carried it had vanished. Until now. The youngest assassin lowers his blade. He cannot kill what is rightful. He cannot bury a king who was never dethroned. The older two argue, blades drawn, voices rising. But the prince does not flinch. He simply steps forward and kneels, unarmed. Vulnerable. Real. The youngest kneels with him, and the others, seeing the old truth wake in the frost, drop their blades into the snow. That night, in the ruined chapel, the scroll is read aloud for the first time. Ileana listens, eyes wide, knees folded beneath her. The prince does not speak as the final line is read. Let my second son rule in silence, for only silence knows the weight of truth. He does not smile. He simply nods once, and for the first time in years, he sleeps without fear. At the edges of history, this chapter is missing. No scribes recorded the confrontation. No paintings show the man on the hill. But in the margins of one monk's prayer book, found years later, 7 words are scratched into the binding. He lived, she learned, and silence was kept. The snow no longer falls, it waits, heavy in the clouds, coiled like breath in the lungs of gods. The wind stands still, as if watching the world hold its final note. In the capital, a city built on bones and lies, the false king coughs blood into a goblet lined with gold. No one speaks of it, but they all hear it. Every cough is a crack in the crown. He once ruled by fear, now he rules by whispers. His nobles no longer kneel, they circle like wolves who smell rot beneath the throne. His guards are paid in silver, not loyalty. His prayers are short, muttered only after wine. He dreams of a child with fire in her voice. He dreams of a man who never died. He wakes choking. Back in the woods, the fire crackles. Ileana, now older, taller, no longer a child, sharpens a stick by the light. Her fingers are steady. Her eyes carry too much silence for her age. The prince watches her. Not as a father, not as a king, but as someone who knows what destiny costs. She hums sometimes, slower now, more careful. The songs aren't lullabies anymore, they're war songs. He teaches her more than words. How to read sigils in dust. How to track a lie by the shape of the mouth. How to vanish without running. She learns quickly, but she never forgets who he is. Not what they call him, not what the world remembers. Who he truly is, beneath the silence, behind the exile. On the 13th winter night, a raven appears at the window. Not blind, not old, but wearing the same ring the prince once gave to the monk in the tower. It drops a scroll. It is not sealed. It is not formal. It is written in a hand only 3 men ever knew. The king is dying, the court is rotting, and the winter throne will fall unless a shadow returns to claim what light has abandoned. He does not speak for hours. Then finally to the girl. It's time you saw the kingdom. They travel at night. Not on roads, through the wild. Old bridges that sag beneath snow. Frozen streams where forgotten coins still glitter beneath the ice. Places where myths were buried, but never stayed buried. They do not wear crowns, they wear silence like armour. And yet everywhere they pass, the people recognise something ancient in their posture. Not rebellion, not war. The capital has changed. The towers lean. The banners are stiff with frost. The market square, once full of dancers, now holds gallows. But one thing remains, carved from oak taken from the first forest, bound in iron, lined in wolfskin, soaked in the blood of 20 kings. No one sits on it now. The false king lies in his chamber, fevered, shivering, muttering names of men long dead. The chancellor holds the city in fear, and in secret he prepares a final decree. If the prince enters the gates, kill him before the sun touches the throne. They enter the palace not with fanfare but with silence. No trumpets, no bells, no army, just two shadows, one tall, one small, walking through the corridor where kings once wept. The prince wears no armour, only the scroll and the memory of what was stolen. In the Hall of Echoes the nobles assemble, faces half hidden, fingers gripping hilts, eyes darting towards the throne, and the figure standing beside it. Not the king, he smiles, but his voice breaks. You cannot return what no longer belongs to you. The prince replies, softly but with steel, It never belonged to me, but I never gave it away. The hall falls to silence. Even the guards hesitate. Then a voice cuts through the hush. Not the prince, Ileana. She steps forward, unarmed, uncrowned, unbroken. She speaks one name and holds up a token, her mother's ring, bearing the lost seal of the bloodline the Chancellor tried to erase. The nobles gasp. Some step back, others step forward. In that hall, history cracks. The Chancellor lunges, steel flashes. The prince moves first, no sword, and only hands, worn, steady, that once held books, not blades. But they find the Chancellor's throat before the lie reaches his lips. He falls, not by violence, but by truth. The Winter Throne stands, untouched. The prince walks toward it, then stops. He looks to Ileana, nods once, and instead of sitting, he places the scroll, the true decree, on the throne. Let it be ruled by memory. Let it be guarded by silence. Let the crown belong to those who never asked for it. Then he turns and leaves. Years later, when the war ended before it began and the throne remained whole, scribes debated who ruled during the lost season. Some say it was the girl, crowned quietly at dusk. Some say it was the prince, ruling from shadows, never taking credit. But deep in the archives, one forgotten scroll lies beneath velvet. Its last line reads, The Winter Throne was never about power. It was about who had the strength to leave it behind. The moon hangs low over the Old Kingdom. Not bright, not full, just enough light to remind the world that some things endure even in shadows. The frost has melted from the stones. The gallows are gone. The streets no longer echo with boots, but with footsteps of children, traders, prayers. And yet deep beneath the palace, in a room no maps remember, the prince kneels one last time. There is no one else here. No guards, no scribes, no witnesses, only a single candle and the scroll he never signed. The scroll that could have crowned him. He holds it for a moment, then sets it gently into the flames. The wax hisses, the parchment curls. The throne, once stolen, once hunted, will now be left behind. Because there is something older than power, something greater than a crown, and tonight he will name it. Ileana sits at the edge of the courtyard, her legs tucked under her, her hands stained with ink. She signs letters now, the edicts, treaties, apologies written to dead houses and living enemies. She speaks less than her council would like, but when she speaks, they listen. Not because of her name, because of her silence. The kind that carries storms behind it. She still hums, sometimes to herself, sometimes for the prince when he cannot sleep. He says nothing when she does, but his shoulders always ease. One morning he takes her to the garden no one visits, the one overgrown with thorn bushes and old vines that cover statues of forgotten saints. He clears the stone bench, sits, and begins. Power is not in blood or birth or banners. It's in what you refuse to take, and what you're willing to protect, even if it never remembers you. She listens. She does not write it down. She knows she won't forget. 3 nights later, under a moonless sky, a ship waits at the eastern dock. No flag, no crew above deck, just an open plank and a letter nailed to the mast. In his hand, he leaves no speech, no farewell, only a cloak laid gently over Ileana's shoulders. And a whisper, I am not gone, just further than memory. She does not cry, she watches until the sails vanish, then turns and walks back to the throne. On the eve of her coronation she takes no crown. Instead, that she lifts the broken blade once hidden beneath the chapel altar, holds it before the crowd and says, This was forged in betrayal, buried in exile, sharpened in silence. And now I keep it not to rule, but to remember. No applause, just bowed heads, and breath held like sacred wind. Years pass, not softly, not cruelly, just honestly. The kingdom does not forget the war that never happened, the girl who hummed lullabies, the prince who chose exile over vengeance. No statues are raised, but stories spread, in taverns, in schools, in lullabies. One tale is told more than others, of a king who never sat on the throne, yet ruled by example, who vanished before the world could ruin him, and taught that soars, when chosen, is louder than any anthem. In the archives of the rebuilt palace far beneath the stone lies a room without doors. Inside it a table, a candle, and a book bound in raven black leather. No title, just a single line scratched onto the spine. Its last page bears no words, only a handprint in ash. Beneath it a date, nothing more, because some truths need no language, and some kings never needed crowns. This is the silent historian, where power ends but memory begins. We have reached the end of this tale. But history is vast, its silence is full of stories still untold. Return when you're ready, we will be waiting